Let's start the video. Subscribe for more stories, like the video, and hit the bell icon. The hum of machinery and the steady buzz of the fluorescent lights filled the air of the military base, tucked away in the heart of a barren desert. It was an isolated outpost, far from the busy cities and the problems of the world. Here, soldiers trained in silence, keeping their skills sharp, far away from the distractions of civilian life. But today, that quiet would be shattered. Captain Elena Carter paced in front of her team in the operations room, eyes scanning the radar screen. It was just another routine morning until the alarm blared, slicing through the calm like a knife. Her hand shot out to slam the emergency button. A sudden ripple of tension surged through the room, an invisible storm warning of something disastrous. The radar flickered to life. Hundreds of dots, unfamiliar, moving too quickly, appeared on the screen. Elena's heart skipped a beat. "What the hell is that?" she muttered under her breath. Sergeant Harris, who had been manning the communications desk, jumped to his feet, his face pale. I've never seen anything like it. They're moving too fast. We can't identify them." Elena's mind raced. Something was off. "What about the perimeter?" she demanded. "What's happening outside the base?" Harris's voice was strained as he toggled between feeds. "Nothing unusual. No threats detected. But there's something strange. One of the patrol units went off the radar. It's like they just vanished." Before Elena could respond, a loud thump echoed from outside the base's walls, followed by a series of guttural, inhuman growls that rattled the entire building. The sound sent a shiver down the spines of everyone in the room. Soldiers froze, unsure of what they were hearing. "Take cover," Elena barked, snapping them out of their daze. "Get to your posts, now." The team scrambled to their stations, adrenaline flooding their veins. There was no time for explanations. They had no idea what they were dealing with, but Elena could already feel the deep-rooted dread in her bones. She had seen too many missions go south to ignore that gut feeling. The base was built to withstand the most relentless attacks, bunkers, automated defenses, and high-tech surveillance. But the soldiers had never been prepared for what was coming now. Whatever this was, it wasn't just another skirmish. It was something far worse. Outside, the first of the invaders appeared at the edge of the fence, silhouetted against the dawn light. Elena's jaw tightened. These weren't your average insurgents. They moved erratically, quick, twitchy movements, dragging their limbs, like they had lost their humanity long ago. "Sir," Harris's voice was a whisper, filled with disbelief. They're not human." Elena's hand flew to her weapon as the pounding on the outer gates intensified. She felt her stomach churn. It was like something out of a nightmare. The growls grew louder, filling the space around them, and through the reinforced windows, the soldiers saw them. They weren't just people. They were something else. "Zombies," muttered Private Owens, his voice breaking. "They're zombies." Elena didn't have time to process the word. She grabbed the comms headset and switched to the base's emergency channel. "All personnel, prepare for immediate lockdown. I repeat, prepare for lockdown. Arm yourselves and move to defense positions. I need all units on standby." The intercom crackled with frantic voices from every corner of the base as soldiers scrambled to obey the orders. The tension was unbearable. Elena's mind was racing. How had this happened? Were these zombies part of a larger attack, or was this some kind of isolated incident? But there was no time for questions. The fence began to shudder under the force of the horde outside. The air was thick with the sounds of snarls, clawing, and scraping. Elena tightened her grip on her rifle, her mind focused. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't going to stop until they overran the base. Just as she was about to give the order to fire, a loud crash echoed from the gates. The first of the zombies had made it through. Their grotesque, decayed faces appeared, hunched bodies staggering toward the soldiers, who opened fire without hesitation. The bullets tore through the first wave, but it didn't matter. The horde behind them surged forward like an unstoppable wave. "Don't let them get inside," Elena shouted, her voice cold, her eyes sharp. "Hold your ground." Her soldiers fought back fiercely, but they could see it. There was no end to this. No matter how many they took down, more kept coming. The undead didn't tire, didn't hesitate. The only thing that mattered was feeding, spreading, taking over. The fear in the air grew heavier, and the first few fallen soldiers were already dragged away, lost to the relentless mob. Captain Carter stood at the front of the line, watching in disbelief as the numbers kept climbing. The base was about to be overrun, and she couldn't see any way out. Would they be able to survive this? Would anyone? There was only one thing she knew for sure. This was no ordinary battle. This wasn't just an attack. This was an extinction event, and the fight for survival was only beginning. The sky above the military base darkened as the sound of the zombies' growls filled the air, sending an icy shiver through Captain Elena Carter's veins. The Horde pressed against the gates, relentless in its assault. The soldiers at the front lines fought valiantly, but the sheer numbers of the undead were overwhelming. The walls that were supposed to keep them safe now felt more like a death trap. Each second that passed another moment closer to total collapse. Elena gripped her rifle tightly, her knuckles turning white. The undead didn't care about strategy or tactics. They were a mindless force, driven only by hunger. It was a nightmare come to life. Reinforce the western gate. Elena shouted over the chaos, her voice steady despite the panic mounting around her. We can't let them breach that sector. Sergeant Harris, his face smeared with dirt and sweat, nodded and barked orders to his squad. They moved quickly, knowing that the survival of the entire base now depended on each action they took. The soldiers fought as one unit, their instincts taking over as they fended off wave after wave of the undead. Despite their best efforts, it was becoming clear that no matter how many zombies they shot down, there were always more. Elena's mind raced. What had caused this sudden outbreak? How had they managed to get so close without detection? She had 1,000 questions, but there was no time for answers. Behind her, explosions erupted as the military's automated turrets opened fire on the advancing zombies. The rounds tore through the air, cutting down scores of the monsters. But each time a zombie fell, 2 more took its place. Captain, Harris called, his voice strained as he approached her, his rifle at the ready. We've got a breach on the eastern side. They're inside the compound. Elena's heart sank. They'd been pushed back too far. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The military base was designed to withstand a siege from enemy forces, but not this. Nothing could have prepared them for this. Get the civilians to the underground bunker. Elena ordered, her tone decisive. We'll hold the line here as long as we can. As Harris moved off to carry out the order, Elena scanned the battlefield. The zombies, with their grotesque, decaying faces and gaping wounds, continued their mindless assault. But something was wrong, something about the way they moved. The way they seemed to coordinate felt different. She didn't have time to dwell on it. A loud crack reverberated through the air, and one of the base's watchtowers collapsed, sending dust and debris flying into the air. The shockwave knocked Elena off her feet. She scrambled to regain her footing, eyes wide in disbelief. This isn't just a random attack, she muttered to herself, her mind racing. It's organized. Someone is controlling them. The realization hit like a hammer. The creatures they were fighting weren't just mindless zombies. They were part of something much bigger. But the question remained, who or what was pulling the strings? We can't keep this up, Lieutenant Myers shouted, joining Elena at the front lines. He was panting heavily, his uniform covered in grime. We need to retreat. We won't survive if we stay here. Elena's jaw clenched. She looked out at the advancing horde, their twisted bodies slowly encroaching on their position. The base was already half in ruins, and the undead showed no sign of stopping. We'll hold for as long as we can, Elena replied, her voice fierce. We won't give up this base without a fight. She turned back toward the soldiers, each one determined to stand their ground. But Elena could see the fear in their eyes. She knew they were fighting a losing battle. The zombies were relentless, and with each passing moment, the base's defenses crumbled further. There was no way they could fend off the horde forever. As the last of the survivors retreated toward the bunkers, Elena's thoughts lingered on one last, desperate plan. They had one remaining asset, a powerful EMP weapon located in the facility's lower levels. If they could activate it, it might disable the zombies' coordinated movements, disrupt whatever force was controlling them. But to do so, they would have to breach the heart of the Horde, enter the facility's underground core, and somehow survive long enough to activate the weapon. The odds were slim, almost non-existent, but it was the only hope they had left. "Elena, we're ready," Myers said, his voice a mixture of fear and determination. "We have to go now." The remaining soldiers gathered their gear and moved quickly, ready for one final push. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this could very well be their last stand. "Stay sharp," she ordered, her voice resolute. "We're going down there to finish this. We fight together. We fight to survive." With one last glance at the base they had sworn to protect, Elena and her team made their way toward the underground bunker. Behind them, the Horde surged forward, a tidal wave of death that threatened to swallow them whole. The final battle was about to begin. The air in the underground facility was thick with tension as Captain Elena Carter and her team descended into the depths of the military base. The concrete walls echoed with their footsteps, the soft clank of their boots against the floor the only sound that dared to break the silence. Their weapons were raised, their senses on high alert. Above them, the screams and gunfire of their comrades fighting for their lives could still be heard, but it was fading. The Horde was overwhelming the base, and time was running out. Elena's mind raced as they descended further into the depths. They had one shot to stop this madness. If they could activate the EMP device in the heart of the facility, they might have a chance. But the road ahead was treacherous, and the undead could be anywhere. As they reached the final level of the underground bunker, Elena held up her hand, signaling for the group to stop. The flickering lights cast long shadows across the steel doors in front of them. Beyond that door lay the control room, where the EMP device was stored. The room was heavily fortified, built to withstand any attack. But Elena had no illusions. If the zombies were truly being controlled by something, they would be waiting for them. "Stay close," Elena whispered, her voice low but firm. "And stay quiet." They pushed forward, their movements precise and deliberate, each step calculated. The door to the control room loomed ahead, its metal frame a silent barrier between them and the last hope for humanity's survival. Elena's hand rested on the door's cold surface, her breath shallow. She could hear the faint growl of zombies on the other side, their presence undeniable. Suddenly, the door to the control room creaked, and a loud crash echoed from within. Elena's heart skipped a beat. They had been spotted. The moment the door burst open, a wave of putrid air rushed out, thick with the stench of decay. Elena's team surged forward, weapons at the ready, but the sight that greeted them made even the most seasoned soldiers pause. In the center of the control room, a group of zombies stood motionless. But these weren't the mindless creatures they had encountered outside the base. These were different. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their movements were unerringly synchronized. They were being controlled, manipulated, perhaps. But by whom? Before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, its silhouette barely visible. Elena's pulse quickened. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a man dressed in a tattered lab coat, his face gaunt, eyes sunken, and a twisted smile curving his lips. "Welcome, Captain Carter," the man said, his voice eerily calm. "I've been expecting you." Elena's grip tightened on her weapon. "Who are you? What is this?" The man tilted his head slightly, studying her with an unsettling calm. "I suppose you could call me Dr. Roderick Graves. And as for this is my work, my legacy. You see, the outbreak wasn't an accident. It was intentional." A chill ran down Elena's spine. She had heard rumors, whispers of rogue scientists experimenting with bioweapons. But she had never imagined anything like this. "You're the one controlling them?" Lieutenant Myers spat, his eyes blazing with anger. "Why? What's the point of all this?" Dr. Graves' smile widened, and he took a slow step toward them, his voice smooth and calm, as though explaining a scientific breakthrough. The point? To push humanity beyond its limits. To create a new world, one where survival isn't a privilege, it's a necessity. The old world was weak, flawed. But these creatures... He gestured to the undead around him, who remained still, as if waiting for a command. They are stronger, more resilient, and they can be controlled. Humanity, as you know it, will soon be obsolete. Elena's mind whirled as she processed his words. He was insane, completely mad. But what truly terrified her was how methodical and calm he was about it. He wasn't just a scientist caught in a twisted experiment gone wrong. No, Dr. Graves had orchestrated this whole nightmare. He had made it happen on purpose. "We're not going to let you get away with this," Elena said through gritted teeth. She motioned to her team. "We need to destroy the EMP device. Now." But Dr. Graves merely chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. "You think you can stop me? You're already too late. The EMP will only disrupt their bodies for a short time. It's the control signal that I've placed inside their neural systems that's permanent. They will never stop. They will never tire." And once the signal reaches the rest of the world, his voice trailed off as he turned toward a nearby console, his fingers dancing across the keys. "It's already begun." Elena's eyes widened in horror as the screens around the room flickered to life, showing maps of major cities across the world. Each one had a red dot pulsing ominously. The signal had already spread. The apocalypse wasn't just contained to this base. It was global. "Stop him," Elena shouted, but it was too late. Dr. Graves had already hit the final button. The room erupted into chaos. The zombies, no longer standing idle, began to move with terrifying speed and purpose, their eyes locked on the team. Elena's soldiers opened fire, but the undead were faster, more coordinated than before. It was a battle for survival, not just of the base, but of humanity itself. "Retreat," Elena screamed. "We need to get back to the surface, now." The team fought their way toward the exit, firing desperately as the horde closed in. But Dr. Graves' laughter echoed through the room, a chilling reminder that the real battle was only just beginning. The control room's door slammed shut behind them with a deafening crash, sending echoes reverberating through the facility's cold, concrete walls. Elena's heart pounded as her team sprinted down the corridor, the sound of gnashing teeth and the dragging footsteps of the zombies following closely behind them. "Keep moving. Don't stop," Elena shouted, her voice desperate but firm. The EMP device was still activated, but it was clear now. Dr. Graves had already unleashed his nightmare on the world. Every moment spent in the facility only brought them closer to death, and escaping the base felt like a fleeting hope that was slipping away with each passing second. Lieutenant Myers was right behind her, breathing heavily. "The signal, it's spreading," he gasped. "We're running out of time." Elena barely acknowledged his words, her eyes scanning the hallway ahead. They had to make it to the surface. If they didn't, humanity was doomed. The EMP might have disrupted the zombies' coordination for now, but Graves had made it clear it was only a temporary fix. They needed to stop him, and fast. The team reached the elevator shaft leading to the surface, but as they neared the doors, they froze. The lights overhead flickered ominously, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward them, as if the darkness itself were alive. From the corner of her eye, Elena caught sight of movement in the hallway behind them. Something, or someone was coming. "Get ready," Elena muttered, her hand tightening around her rifle. "We're not out yet." The elevator doors groaned and creaked, but as she tried to press the button to call it up, there was no response. The system had gone down. Panic began to creep into her mind. They needed to get out of here, and fast. Then, from the shadows ahead, a figure stepped forward. Elena's heart skipped a beat. "Graves," she whispered, recognizing the man who had led them into this nightmare. But it wasn't just Dr. Graves standing there. He was flanked by a few of his most loyal followers, humans, but different. They had been turned into something else. Their skin was pale, eyes hollow, with the unmistakable glint of control. These were survivors, perhaps once soldiers, who had succumbed to Graves' twisted experiments. They were no longer human, merely vessels for his will. "Elena," Graves said with a sickening smile, his voice calm as ever. "You think you can stop this? You think you can save what's left of humanity?" His gaze shifted to her soldiers. "The truth is, I never wanted to destroy humanity. I wanted to evolve it. You're all simply too weak to see the potential." Elena stepped forward, anger burning in her chest. "You're insane. You've killed so many people, turned them into monsters. You've doomed the world." Graves didn't flinch. "No, Captain. I've liberated them. I've made them stronger. As for you, you're too late." He glanced over his shoulder, signaling to the zombified soldiers behind him. "It's time to finish what we started." Before Elena could react, the twisted figures lunged at them with unnatural speed. The first soldier in the group was on Elena before she even had time to raise her weapon. She slammed the barrel of her rifle into its chest, but it barely flinched. It was like fighting a machine with the ferocity of a predator. "Fall back," Elena shouted. "We can't fight them here. Move." Her team scrambled to get into position, but they were already surrounded. The hallway was closing in around them. The surface, their only chance of survival, felt so far away. Elena knew they couldn't escape without a fight, but they also couldn't stay here much longer. It was then that something unexpected happened. One of the soldiers, Private Owens, who had been part of Elena's team from the beginning, suddenly broke ranks. His eyes were wide with fear, his face pale as he stood frozen in place. "Elena," Owens began, his voice trembling. I can't do it. I can't keep fighting." Elena's eyes widened in shock. "Owens, get your head in the game. We need to move now." But Owens didn't respond. Instead, he turned slowly toward Dr. Graves, his hands shaking as he lowered his weapon. The horror in Elena's stomach twisted as she saw what was happening. "No," she whispered, her heart sinking. Owens was surrendering. Dr. Graves smiled, a look of satisfaction creeping over his face. Owens, you always were one of the more perceptive ones." He turned to his new followers. "He's seen the truth. He's seen what humanity could become if only it would embrace its new destiny. The world is better off without weakness. You should all understand that by now." "No," Elena hissed, her voice rising in rage. "Owens, don't do this. You can still fight. Don't let him control you." But Owens, his eyes now vacant, stepped toward Graves, completely under his influence. It was a betrayal, a heart-wrenching one. The fear, the confusion in Owens' eyes before he surrendered, it all shattered Elena's resolve for a moment. The rest of the soldiers stood frozen, unsure of what to do. But there was no more time for hesitation. Elena's instincts kicked in, and she grabbed Myers by the arm, pulling him away from the confrontation. "We have to go. Now." They sprinted down the corridor, leaving Owens and the others behind. As they rounded the corner, Elena could hear the sickening sound of Owens' screams, mingling with the laughter of Dr. Graves. It was too late to save him. Reaching the surface was their only priority now. The world had already changed, and if they didn't make it out of the base, it was all over. Elena didn't know how, but somehow, she had to stop Graves and his army of the undead. The fight wasn't over. The surface of the base greeted Elena and her team with an eerie silence. The once bustling military outpost was now a ghost town, the buildings dark and hollow. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and decay. It felt as though the world had already died, leaving only the remnants of a shattered civilization in its wake. Elena's heart raced as they sprinted toward the entrance to the last known evacuation route, a tunnel that led to a safe zone far beyond the base. They had to get there, regroup, and then somehow stop Dr. Graves before his nightmare spread beyond the borders of the base. Time was running out. The EMP device had only given them a temporary reprieve, and now that Graves had the signal in place, humanity's last hope rested on their shoulders. "We're almost there," Myers muttered as they reached the tunnel entrance. His voice was strained, his face grim. "But what about the others?" "Owens, We don't have time to save him," Elena said, her voice cold. though it hurt to say the words. Owens had made his choice. He was lost, and they had to accept that. We need to stop Graves and end this now. The soldiers moved swiftly into the tunnel, knowing that every second they wasted brought the world closer to its end. The Horde, though temporarily disoriented by the EMP blast, was regathering force under Graves' control, and their numbers were only growing. They were about to face an army unlike any the world had seen before. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and claustrophobic, but it offered some semblance of safety. Elena led the way, Myers close behind her, with the rest of the team following in a tight formation. The distant sound of undead moans grew fainter the further they descended, but the uneasy silence only made Elena feel more on edge. The fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Suddenly, Elena stopped dead in her tracks. She heard something, a low rumble, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, faint but growing louder. It wasn't the undead. "They're here," Myers whispered, his voice filled with dread. At the mouth of the tunnel, several figures appeared, silhouettes in the dim light. Elena's grip tightened on her weapon, and she held her breath. Then, as the figures came into full view, she saw them clearly. It was Dr. Graves and his loyal followers, Owens among them, his face blank and devoid of life, now a puppet for Graves' sickening plans. The others, his former colleagues and soldiers, all walked with the same vacant, controlled expressions. Elena's heart sank. They had made it to the tunnel first. They weren't just coming for them. They were cutting off their only escape route. "You're too late, Captain." Graves' voice echoed through the darkness, cold and triumphant. "You've run out of time. This world has already changed. I've already won." Elena's pulse hammered in her ears as she took a defensive stance, her soldiers falling into position behind her. "Not yet," she spat. "There's still a chance." Graves smiled, but it was the smile of a man who believed he was untouchable. "Do you really think you can stop me, Elena? You've been fighting a losing battle from the start. The signal is out, and soon it will spread across every major city in the world. There's no escape. You and your people are nothing more than an obstacle to be crushed." But Elena was done with talking. She motioned to her soldiers to move forward, weapons raised. The fight was here, and there was no more running. If they didn't face Graves now, humanity wouldn't have a chance. Graves raised his hand, and immediately his followers began to advance, the same cold, lifeless determination in their steps. Owens was at the front, his vacant eyes locking onto Elena's with no recognition. It was like he was already gone, completely consumed by Graves' twisted control. "Do it," Elena ordered. The soldiers opened fire. The gunshots rang out through the tunnel, filling the air with the staccato rhythm of battle. The controlled humans charged forward, each one seemingly immune to the pain as they advanced relentlessly. Elena's team fought hard, but it was clear they were outmatched in numbers. "Focus on Graves," Elena shouted. "We need to stop him, not them." She pushed forward, Myers at her side, as the rest of the team kept the controlled soldiers at bay. Graves watched them approach with eerie calm, his eyes gleaming with victory. But Elena's mind was clear now. They had to take him down, or everything they had fought for would be lost. Elena reached the front of the group, and in one fluid motion, she lunged toward Graves. But just as she was about to strike, a sharp pain shot through her leg. She staggered and turned, finding Owen standing behind her, his face expressionless as he held a knife, the blade dripping with fresh blood. "No," Elena gasped, trying to steady herself. "Owen, stop." But he didn't respond. His movements were mechanical, a puppet in Graves' sickening game. With a burst of strength, Elena kicked Owens aside, sending him sprawling to the ground. She didn't have time to think about the pain in her leg. It was all or nothing now. Graves, watching the struggle unfold, laughed. "You think you can stop me, Elena? You think you can take control of this world back for me? It's too late. The signal is already active. The world will be mine." "No," Elena snarled, her face twisted in fury. "Not if I have anything to say about it." In a final act of defiance, she lunged forward once more. This time, she reached him. Graves' eyes widened in surprise, but it was too late. Elena drove the knife into his chest, and with one swift motion, she ended the twisted reign of the man who had started it all. Graves gasped, a sickening gurgle escaping his lips before he fell to the ground, his body collapsing in a heap. For a moment, there was silence. And then, with a sudden jolt, the signal that had once controlled the Horde flickered and died. The soldiers who had been under Graves' influence froze, blinking in confusion, as if awakening from a terrible dream. The undead, no longer coordinated, began to scatter, their movements aimless. Elena staggered back, breathless, her leg throbbing with pain. The battle was over, but at what cost? The survivors stood in the tunnel, the weight of the battle heavy in the air. The world outside would never be the same, but they had survived. For now, that was enough. "Elena," Myers said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it." Elena looked down at the chaos around her, the ruins of a world that had been changed forever. The fight had ended, but the war for humanity's future was far from over. And they would be ready. The survivors turned, walking out of the tunnel into the unknown, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that the true battle for survival was just beginning. The end for now.